Hello. Everybody who's tuned in right now, hello. Thank you so much for joining us. I am so happy that I get the opportunity to interview the one and only, the most wonderful, glorious Ghanaian woman you will ever know in your whole entire life. Nana Darkoa. Hello, my sister.
Hey, Kaz. So good to chat to you and so good to see you. You look amazing.
Me? I just laughed this. I'm kidding. It took me about an hour. Thank you.
Totally worth every second of that hour. You look great.
Thank you. Thank you. Also, I've always wanted to tell you look so beautiful in mustard. Like your chocolate skin against the mustard. So beautiful.
Thank you. We have
How
a
are you?
mutual appreciation society going on here.
Yes, that's how it should be. Yes.
Yes.
How are you doing?
I'm really, really good. I cannot complain. I'm really good. Yes. Life is good right now.
I'm really curious to know since you launched your book, The Sex Lives of African Women, I'm really curious to know how exhausted. I mean, you must be going through so much because, first of all, writing a book is not easy. But then once you launch the book and then you have to do all the publicity and you have to push the book and all of that stuff, like what has that journey been from the day of launch until now?
It's been super interesting. You know, one of the things that really kept me going through the long process of writing the book was wanting to get to this stage where I could actually have conversations with people about the book. And so it feels really, really good to be at the stage where we can talk about the issues in the book. Because I am one of those writers who was writing because there are beliefs I have, there are observations I make, and I want to share those with the world. And I want to be in conversation with other African women about what I'm noticing and what I'm hearing. And so for me, it feels really good. It's obviously intense, but it's a good place to be. I can't complain. It will be worse to be in the opposite situation where you have a book out and nobody wants to talk to you about the issues in your book or about your book itself.
Yeah. And before we go any further, I would actually really like you to tell us a little bit about yourself, because I'm pretty sure that there's some people who are tuned in and are just like, how did these girls just jump into this conversation without introducing themselves? So maybe we can start. You can tell us a little bit about yourself, but also share your pronouns so that I don't want to misgender you.
Thank you. So I use she, her pronouns. And about myself, I guess a primary identity for me is I'm an African feminist. So that's something that's super important to me. And that really informs everything I do, really. I'm a friend, I'm a sister to many, I'm a mother of an 18-month-old, I'm a communication strategist, I'm a writer, I'm a blogger. I love to read. What else do you want to know, Kaz?
What are you currently reading?
Oh my gosh, what am I currently reading? It's so funny how the minute somebody asks you that, you forget. I'm actually reading an anthology, which I contributed to, on feminist parenting. Yes, I'm reading that anthology. I never really do this. I'm reading 2 books at the moment. And I'm also reading a not very exciting book called Baby Wise, because my baby is not a great sleeper. She's a toddler, not a baby. And so I'm reading that. And then I'm also listening to on Audible.
Okay. So let's just go into the juicy, okay? Let's talk about sex. I'm very curious to know. I'm not going to ask you what got you into becoming in the work of sex and sexuality. I'm actually very curious to know what your personal spiritual or sexual awakening was.
Oh gosh, what was my sexual awakening? I mean, I feel like I've had a couple, because I don't think I believe that there's like one sexual awakening that people have. You know, there was definitely one around the age of 27 when I was like, at the time, I got married fairly young. I got married when I was 25, and I had a moment where I was just like, do I really want to sleep with just this person for the rest of my life? And the answer was no, you know, which is why the relationship ended. And I feel like that was a sexual awakening. That was a moment where I was starting to question and wanting to experience more than I was experiencing, and more than I knew I would experience in a monogamous heterosexual relationship. So I feel like that was my first sexual awakening. And I feel like my second sexual awakening came around the age of 30, when I became just a bit more confident in myself. Yeah, really just more confident in myself, you know? And I feel like my next sexual awakening is like going to happen in about a year's time, because right now, there really isn't that much sex happening.
I mean, with a baby, it must be hard.
Baby plus pandemic plus work.
Oh
And
yeah,
I'm
I
just
forgot
like,
about the pandemic.
I know, right? And I'm just like, okay, yeah, 2023. I'm planning ahead to 2023. Yes.
I'm here for it. I'm gonna look back. I'm actually gonna come back to you in 2023 and be like, what's going on? Okay?
Yes, that's a deal, Kaz. That's a deal.
Okay. And it's funny that you say that because all of my like wonderful sex and relationship experiences have happened during the pandemic.
Oh my God, I'm so jealous. I am
Yes.
so jealous. Tell me more. I know this is not me interviewing you, but let's have a conversation.
Sure, why not? I'm polyamorous, which means I have multiple relationships. I currently am dating 3 people, all in different spaces. One of the relationships is actually long. We've been dating for 4 years, kind of like on and off. One of the relationships just started at the actually, we're almost a year old. We're going to be a year old in December. And one of the relationships started in June of this year. So I just feel like I have really taken pandemic by the reins and
Yes.
ridden it
Yeah.
all the way to Happy Town.
No, this makes me happy to hear because, Kaz, you may not remember, because we had a conversation when you were last in Ghana, which was around 2019. And at the time, I don't think there was very much happening for you sexually. So for me, this gives me hope, right? Because you're living like my best sex life in my head dreams. And so I'm like, okay, my 2023 will come around and I'll be a bit more like Kaz.
You know what? Yes, I'm here for it because honestly, I am living everybody's best sex life. That is the truth. So,
Amen to that. Amen to that. We're happy when, our sisters are happy and thriving and, having all those good O's.
Yeah. So, before your book, The Sex Lives of African Women, came out, you've been writing a blog for a long, long time. In fact, Nana, that's how I heard about you because people spoke about you all the time. You need to meet Nana. Like, Nana was always like the guru of like, when I started doing the work that I was doing in sexuality, you were always just like at the top of the thing. And everybody was like, you have to meet Nana. Nana is the person to go to. And I understand the struggles of having discussions around sex and sexuality in the global south, in African countries, especially because of the way we were raised and all the conservativeness around the way that we're raised. And the reason that I air quote it is because people hide behind being conservative. But behind those curtains, we all know what they're doing. They're just doing things and not talking about them, right?
Exactly.
So I'm wondering, since the time you started writing and with gained popularity, what are some of the worst things that you've heard said about you?
You know what? I actually don't think I hear horrible things said about me. And maybe I just don't tune in and I just don't listen and I just don't engage. I don't hear horrible things said by me. I surround myself with like a sex positive community and African feminist community. Nobody says horrible things about me. If they do, I don't hear it. I'm not listening,
Yeah, I feel the same way. And there's a lesbian woman who lives she's very popular. She calls herself the lesbian something. I can't remember what her Instagram handle is. But she posted something on Twitter yesterday saying, if you read any gossip about me in the tabloids, don't share it with me. Don't tell me about it because I don't know.
I love that. I love that. Yeah, no, I think it's very easy, to engage with the negativity. But I feel like this is my personal choice. I feel like when you engage, then you encourage the trolls and then you feed the trolls. And people are completely entitled to disagree. I'll give you an example. BBC Africa recently did a podcast featuring me, and I had a great conversation with the host, Victoria, and a number of BBC staff actually voiced different excerpts of the book. And they shared it on Twitter. And I saw yesterday a woman had responded saying, I'm an African woman, I'm a mother with 2 children, and I disagree that sexual freedom means girls have to sleep around. And I was just like, but that's not what I said, And I was tempted to respond and say that's not, but I'm like, why do I need to waste my energy to explain to her? This is what she's taken away from the conversation. Fair enough. I leave it. But I can see a situation where if I had responded, other people would be like, yes, and you said this and you said that. Okay, take away whatever you wanted to take away. Mine is not to explain to you. Listen to me. If what I say resonates, great. If it doesn't resonate, move on.
And also just like for somebody to make such a big overall judgment based off of like this book that you've written about so many different kinds of African women exploring their sexualities in so many different ways. And then for her to say, I'm an African woman and being sexually like open means that I'm not sleeping around. It's just like, yes, actually the answer to your thing is yes, because it's yours. But there's other people who are
Exactly.
experiencing their sexuality different. And it has nothing to do with
Exactly.
you because
Yes.
you're not sleeping with them,
Yes,
you know?
exactly. And but people will hear what they want to hear. And
And
yeah,
pick out the
like,
parts that they want to pick out. They just do
yeah,
this and then they pick out. They're just like, okay, this is the part that I want to focus on, and I'm going to spew negativity about it. People are so angry.
exactly.
They
They
just need to
are,
get
they are.
played, maybe. I don't know. Anyway. Out of curiosity, are both your parents still living?
Unfortunately, my dad died in January due to the pandemic, but my mom is still alive. And, my mom loves me and supports me. Even just this one, and she said to me, "Oh, your auntie was saying she had you on BBC. Nowadays, I don't listen to the radio." And I'm like, "Mom, the interview is published online. I'll send you a link.
Yeah, I'm so, so sorry about your father, honey. I'm sorry. That's really
Thank you.
terrible. We're losing so
Thank
many
you.
people. It's heart-wrenching. I'm
Mhm.
sorry that you have to deal with that. Because actually, my question was going to be about what was it like initiating the conversation about the work that you do to your parents, and what was their response?
So I never initiated a conversation, but of course, the work that I do has been very visible for over a decade now. So they saw it like right from the early days. And in the beginning, they were confused. They were like, "But why do you want to talk about your sex life?" But then actually, what really changed was when I got an award from Blogging Ghana, which was the name of the blogging network here at the time. And then suddenly they
Mm.
were like, "Oh, somebody gave you some money. Somebody like gave you an award and said you want the best blog. Are you going to take us out to dinner with this money?"
Hmm. Oh my
And
gosh, African parents are everywhere. Same.
exactly. So I think once the recognition came, they were like, "Oh, okay, so people value this." And I remember at some point in time, my dad actually saying to me, "One day maybe people will credit you with like contributing to the rights of homosexuals in Ghana." And you could have knocked me off my chair with a feather. I was like, "What?" So I feel like parents themselves go on a journey, and we need to give them space and time to go on the journey. One thing my dad always used to say was, "I don't want to know about your sex life." But he would constantly say to me, "When are you finishing your book? When are you finishing your book?" Because as far as he was concerned, I was taking too long to finish this book that I'd said I was writing, and he didn't understand. I'd been on residencies, and I'll come back and he's like, "So have you finished your book?" And I'm like, "Dad, it was 2 weeks. You don't finish your book in 2 weeks, you know?" So he was like one of those African parents who's really supportive of their children achieving whatever they say they're going to achieve, even if he's not comfortable with it. And so I know
Yeah.
he would have never read my book, but he wanted the book to come out in the world. My mom, on the other hand, I gave her the book, and my story was the first one she read. And her reaction was, "Okay, but I'm okay with what you wrote, but why didn't you make yourself anonymous like some of the other women?" You know? Um, and she was like, "I hope with the US edition, you're going to make yourself anonymous." And I was like,
Is my response. Mm,
exactly. I mean,
yeah.
it's fine for her to say whatever she wants to say because she's a mother who cares and she wants to give me advice. And actually, her concern was coming more from a place of concern for my security because she was like, in Ghana, they're trying to pass a bill banning LGBTQI advocacy and banning the rights of gay people. That's her
Hmm.
concern. And I feel like that's generally where parents are coming from. They're coming from a place of fear, which I
Hmm.
understand. Every parent, almost every parent, wants to protect their child and wants to keep their children safe. But actually, what will make us safe, for the rights of everybody to be recognized, for people to be able to do the work they want to do, for people to be who they are without other people and without the state, especially trying to control, who we love, what we say, and what we do. That's actually what will make us safe.
Yeah. I have similar conversations with my dad about him like asking me to be more anonymous with my stories. And my response is always my lifestyle is political. Like me being is a form of activism because
Mm-hmm.
there's so many people who are actually finding freedom in the fact that I talk about my polyamory or my queerness or my sexuality. People are just like, "Oh, you mean it's okay for me to talk about myself too? You mean it's okay for me to be myself, you know?"
Mm-hmm.
So I always do find that our beings, especially in this line of work, is an act of activism and it's a political statement.
I agree with you 100%. Yeah, I agree with you 100%.
So I wanted to know, what was your process when it came to selecting stories for your book, and why am I not in it?
It's a good question. I'd actually decided that I didn't want to like interview too many obvious people and too many people that were my friends, because that in a way would almost be too easy, right? People
Yeah,
like you are in my community, people like Tiffany Mugu, who does Hola Africa. You guys have
yeah.
your own platform. I wanted to interview like a lot of people that I didn't know. You know, in the long run, I did end up interviewing like maybe two people that I know who are also friends, but I was really, really trying not to do that. And so I did a range of different things. I did a call out on my blog. I did a call out on Twitter. You know, I would go to like countries, and then in Sao Tome, for example, I asked my tour guide if he could introduce me to any Sao Tomean woman who would want to be interviewed. A friend of a friend came to dinner at my house with her partner, and the partner was a complete stranger to me, but she was like a cool 70-year-old queer African American woman. And I was just like, I would love to interview you for my book. So I would just approach people that I felt would have an interesting story to tell. Or sometimes they were just from a country that I really didn't know a lot about, you know, like Costa Rica. The one I interviewed from Costa Rica, it's not like I had so many choices. Like I was there for a short period. She was, you know, a Black woman. And so I was like, can I interview you? And in fact, at the beginning, I was like, can you introduce me to somebody? And then the long one, I'm like, can I just interview you directly? You know? So I wanted the range. Yeah.
Did you have any pushback?
In terms of like people that I would approach and ask if
Yes.
I can interview them. I don't really feel like I did. No, I don't really feel like I did. No. In fact, there were also people who approached me and wanted me to interview them, you know. So I also interviewed some people because they came to me and they were like, you know, can you interview me? I would love to interview you, or I want to share my story with you. There was a time, for example, I was feeling a little bit like, oh my God, you know, I've interviewed too many people who have experienced child sexual abuse, and I want to interview people who are like living their best sex lives. So that was a call out I did on Twitter. Are you living your best sex life? Can I interview you for my book? And a woman tweeted back at me and she was like, no, I'm not living my best sex life, but I still want you to interview me for your book. And so I did, you know, and that was Maureen's story, which I think is a super important story. And I'm really glad I have that in the book.
That's really beautiful, Nana, that you're able to encapsulate so many different people's stories. I mean, I think it's really beautiful. And one of the things that I've been having conversations with you and a little bit on social media is the fact that I really want to turn your book into a stage play. I think it would be great. And it's something that I really want to work on for next year. But the more that I hear you speak in this conversation right now, I feel like I really want you to turn your book into a traveling TV show.
That's a cool idea. That's a really cool idea. Yes.
In the meantime, for maybe over 20 years of my life, I know it doesn't show.
No, it doesn't.
We've been doing the Vagina Monologues, which is a book that was written by Eve Ensler. Similar stories about different women and just women from around the world experiencing different types of almost like sexual awakenings. So not all of them are necessarily sexual. There's women who talk about childbirth. There's women who talk about like seeing their vaginas for the first time. There's women who talk about just like, there's so many different experiences of women. And the last time that I did the Vagina Monologues, I was just like, this is it. Because I realized that we're telling so many stories about women that are not our women. I really want to be able to put on something similar, like the Vagina Monologues, on stage that tells stories of African women. And then what happens? The universe introduces me to you and you write a book called The Sex Lives of African Women. And now we must put it on stage.
Yes. I'm so down for it. You know, I really want to see like this book out in different versions. I would love like a TV series inspired by the book. Malika and I are working on a podcast. So, you know, very much sort of interviewing women about the experiences of sex and sexuality. So that will hopefully come out sometime next year. But I would love to see this on the stage, like you say. I have to confess, I hadn't thought of it being produced in theater form, but I think that will be really beautiful.
Yeah, I think so too. I think it'll be lovely. I can't wait to do it, you know, given the permissions. How would you say that your sex life has changed from the time that you started writing the book?
Unfortunately, my sex life has become worse, right? Like I was saying. But actually, what's also been good through the process of writing the book is I feel more inspired to really try and get to the stage of sexual freedom that some of the women I interviewed, I felt were. So the book is in 3 broad sections, healing, self-discovery, and freedom. And the woman I placed in the freedom section were the women that I felt were living their best sex lives. And I don't think it's a coincidence that a lot of these women were queer or were poly. I myself consider myself a solo polyamorist. But to be honest, I don't think I've really explored true polyamory, And so I'm challenged to just sort of push my own boundaries. But my boundaries right now are really just limited by, pandemic and being a young
parenthood.
mother. Yes. Yeah. And it's okay. I recognize that's just for a short period. So, yeah.
Yeah. What do the dating apps and dating spontaneously in Ghana look like?
Oh, God. It's a struggle. I feel like I sign up to dating app and I leave within 3 days for a couple of reasons. I realized that actually the few people who are there who seem interesting, I already know, I've already dated and I'm not interested in them, or the conversations just end up being really inane, like, hi, how are you? I'm fine.
Oh gosh,
it's so boring. And I've tried asking friends.
Absent.
I know, right? I've tried asking friends to introduce me to people, and people are like, I don't know who to introduce you to. So anybody who is watching this, if you're interested in me, please holler at me. I am, what's the expression that people say? When they are open to dating people, there's an expression that people use that I can't remember. So
I can't remember, honey. I'm dating
several people.
And you can actually feel free not to answer this. Do you consider yourself queer?
Yeah. I am. Yeah, I'm a bisexual woman.
Okay, cool. Which story resonates with you the most? Other than your story, which of the other stories do you feel resonates with you the most, and why?
Probably the story by Helen Banda. It's not so much that it resonates with me, but it's a story that I love. And obviously, I love all of the stories, right? But just in terms of me, myself, I feel like, that would be an incredible place to be in a couple of years. And part of what's really nice about Helen Banda's story is that she and her husband basically had been in a sort of conventional, heteronormative, monogamous relationship for about 10 years. They had discussed, exploring, and they had discussed specifically swinging. And basically they got to a stage where they both gave themselves permission to see other people. And part of what I really like is they have 3 children, including a child who has special needs. And they take turns, caring for their children so the other person can go on dates. Helen's partner can come over and spend the night at their house. Helen's husband is friends with the wife of one of Helen's partners. And it just seems really beautiful. It's really open. It doesn't mean it's perfect. She did say she knows that her husband sometimes feels a little bit jealous because she tends to get more dates than he does. But, in general, it's working for them. And I like that because I feel like a lot of people can be stuck in marriages and be really unhappy. And instead of being able to speak openly and honestly about why they're unhappy, somebody goes out and cheats, and then somebody else is left hurt. And so that's what I really like about ethically non-monogamous relationship. The openness, the honesty, the communication, and the support, and really the expansion of the heart and the expansion of relationships. It's, like Helen was saying to me, she wants to come into people's life and be a source of joy, not to, in a sense, be one of the reasons why somebody else, feels unhappy. And I think that's really beautiful. And that really touched me. Yeah.
That's actually one of my favorite stories in your book as well. It makes a lot of sense, especially because of the way that their polyamory unfolded into this really beautiful thing. I enjoyed reading that story. So currently you're solo polyamorous, but that's because of everything that's happening right now. But when you do start dating and you're able to explore different aspects of your polyamory, how do you feel about it regarding specifically being a mother and having a child? How do you think those conversations are going to go, or how do you think it's going to affect your relationship with your child?
Actually, having a child has made me desire partnership, whereas before I didn't really desire partnership. And I think it's for really pragmatic reasons. I want other people who are as emotionally invested in my child as I am to come into our lives and to be there for my child. So she has more and more people that she can rely on, and I want my child to understand from a really young age that, there are many different types of families, and all of those ways of being and all of those ways of supporting each other and caring for each other are legitimate, but obviously you also do not want to introduce people to your child really quickly. So I don't think any romantic partners will be meeting my child for years, to be honest, until I know that this is a relationship, because children get connected to people easily. I mean, she's too young to connect to anybody apart from me in a way that she would miss or recognize them if they're not there. But yeah.
And I think this is one of the reasons why I'm not a parent. Because I sometimes feel like it's traumatized my parents, but I really haven't, because I was raised in a really, really liberal home where we were allowed to take our partners home, which means I took almost all of my partners to go and meet my parents all the time, right? Regardless of how short the relationship turned out to be, or how, like, it was just like, especially my mom, God rest her soul. She was very opening, and she just loved the fact that I had so many different people in my lives at different points in my life. And she was very welcoming to, like, even when I was in my teens and I had boyfriends, she would just be so welcoming about them. And she would be so welcoming with my friends as well. My friends were allowed to come and sleep over, and their boyfriends would come and visit them at my place, whereas they weren't allowed to do that in their house. So my mom was she was the coolest parent on the block. I feel like if I was a parent, then that would be some stupid thing that I'd be doing, where I'd be prematurely introducing my child to, like, all of my lovers. But
no,
also,
I think it depends how old your child is, right? So I don't think it's a bad thing. It depends how old your child is, how mature they are, and I feel like if your child is like an adult teenager, that's completely legitimate. So I don't think that's a terrible thing.
Yeah, but I do also feel like in that age, specifically with teens or preteens, I mean, if it's something that you introduce to them at that point, I feel like they might be a little bit rebellious because they don't understand why. Sometimes children can be really clingy just based on, obviously, the kind of attachment style that you've raised them in. I do think that teens understanding polyamory at that point in their life could be a little bit destructive, which actually brings me to my next question for you. What do you feel about having conversations about sex and your relationship with your child and introducing sex education into their lifestyle? What does that look like for you?
I mean, for me, it looks like really the basics, right? Like, first of all, naming body parts by their actual names. So children grow up knowing the names of their body parts. It starts with also letting them know that their body is theirs, and really nobody has a right to touch them without their permission. And it includes, like, even basics, like they don't have to hug people if they don't want to hug them. I think that's all teaching them ownership over their own bodies. It's also as to do with answering questions openly and honestly as much as possible. I think if a child is asking you a question, there's a reason why they're asking you the question. And, part of what your responsibility to do is to teach them and to answer what they're asking you, because otherwise they're going to go and find out maybe the wrong information from the internet or from their friends, So I want to be as open and honest as possible. Yeah, to give my child, like, full access to knowledge. I think there's a lot of evidence to show that actually people and children who actually get access to comprehensive sex education, they're not the ones who are going to, like, become pregnant as teenagers, which is what everybody's fear is. It's like actually the countries where, they have really comprehensive abortion rights, for example, they have lower rates of abortion, whereas countries that stigmatize abortion tend to have high rates of
unsafe abortions.
Backdoor abortions. So yeah.
And funny that you should bring that up, because Ghana is actually one of the countries that is on paper supposed to have comprehensive sexuality education introduced into the education system.
And the conservatives and far right organized to make sure that didn't happen, because somehow they felt like talking about sex was a gateway to introducing the famous gay agenda.
Of course.
Yes.
So, for example, reading the Bible every Sunday and going to church might turn you into Jesus. Something like that?
Yes, basically. Yes.
We're having the same problems here in Kenya. I mean, they don't want to have conversations about sex. They don't want to put free condoms in public spaces, because when you see a condom, you're automatically going to get turned on. Like, it's the condom that turns you on. I mean, it's just ridiculous. Some of the reasonings of these extreme
Right,
right
right,
wing, right
yeah, right
wing,
wing,
and
yeah,
religious leaders and
yes.
government officials and so on. And actually, that's the reason why I'm currently focusing on a consent curriculum that has nothing to do with sex, because I feel like this might be
Mm,
one of the ways in which to introduce comprehensive sexuality education into the education system, kind of like through the back door. So it's like I'm
mhm.
creating a consent curriculum that has absolutely nothing, no mention of anything sex or sexuality. It literally is about communication and relationships, and that same thing. If you don't want to hug auntie so and so, you don't have to. You don't have to sit on so and so's lap. You don't, and then also advocating for your child. Like, look,
Yes.
they said no. I want you to be able to respect their body autonomy. They have said no,
Mm-hmm.
respect
Mm-hmm.
their no. And that gives people, I mean, obviously it's going to shake people up like, oh my gosh, have you seen the way Nana talks to people these days since she, you know what I mean? There's going to be a lot of that when those conversations begin to come up. I know that for a fact. People always just feel like, she just feels so good these days because she's an award winning author. I've said award winning author because I'm preempting
Hallelujah.
this.
Amen. Thank you.
What are some of the things that you might say you're afraid of being a parent?
Oh, what am I afraid of? I guess like I'm afraid that my daughter will grow up to hate me just because sometimes kids hate their parents, you know? Yeah, that's a little bit, not a major fear at all. I'm that parent who also wants to still have a life, who, you know, at a certain stage will want to go on another long writing residency, who, yeah, has to lock herself up in her office to work. And
Mm-hmm.
I think sometimes children don't see enough examples of mothers who are, you know, seeking to excel in their own lives and careers. And yeah, sometimes they end up resenting their mothers because they feel like they weren't there for them 100%. So I definitely want to have that balance between living my own life and also being a good parent. I think that balance is possible, but yeah, that's the fear. Like, what if my child feels like I don't have enough time for them, or I didn't have enough time for them, or I can't drop everything when they want me to drop everything?
I was interviewing somebody yesterday, actually a Ghanaian. Her name is Na Ashako, I think. You know her? She's in broadcasting, I think.
I think you're saying nah, Shoko.
That's it.
Yes.
Yes. So I was interviewing her yesterday about life in broadcasting or being in the public media and being a parent. And I don't want to
Mm.
focus too much on conversations about parenting. So this is going to be my last question about that. But one of the things that she did say was that a lot of people in media really tried to push her into having children young, because they say either you have them young and then you can sort of jump back into being in the public scene, being in the broadcasting world, or alternatively you wait until much later to have children, and so that way you're able to flourish in your career. But in all of these conversations, what I was hearing the most is that, like, you need to be selfish, you need to think about yourself, you need to think about your career. I don't know if that is something that rings true to you too.
I mean, I feel like different things work for different people, right? Like, I didn't have a child early, and I'm really glad I didn't, you know? And even now, I mean, I could still have waited a couple more years.
Mm.
You know, I wanted to be comfortable before having children. And yeah, the advantage of doing it now is I can afford things like living nanny, and I can afford to put her in a really nice nursery where I know she'll be well looked after. And I wouldn't have been able to do that in my 20s. So this decision
Mm-hmm.
is what worked for me. But also, there are lots of other decisions, including the decision not to have children. I don't think everybody needs to have children, you know?
Yeah, I don't think I'm going to have children. I love children very, very, very much. I'm a great auntie. You can leave your kids with me over the weekend. But one of the things that I do want to do is, like, my dream house is up in the farm, like where we grew up as kids, like my grandparents' farm. I'm currently building my home there because I
Mm.
want to spend the rest of my days in the
Oh,
farm.
sweet.
We have coffee and tea around us. There's so many people who work on the farm who have children. And I've
Mm.
always just felt like that would be my opportunity to have children. Because once I'm
Mm.
living there, I want to be able to create some form of extracurricular activities for the kids in the village. So when they come back from school, they have like entertainment for about an hour and maybe some tea and snacks. books before they go home and do their homework. And also, if the universe will allow for me to do this, I really would like to be able to pay for all of their education so that their parents don't have to struggle with that. So these are some of my dreams about childcare. It's almost like fostering. I dream of fostering children, but not having my own.
That sounds really beautiful. And I think there are many ways to be a mother, and that's a legitimate way to be a mother. It doesn't mean you have to have the children biologically. It doesn't mean like you have to formally adopt a child and have the child live with you. I think there's just many ways of showing love. And there are so many children out in the world who deserve love and need more love. And so, yes, why not?
Yes, I agree. Who would you say has been a really big influence on your work since you got into the line of sex and sexuality? Who would you say has been your, like mine is Nana? Who was your Nana?
Oh my goodness. This feels like pressure.
It's supposed to be. You know, pressure makes diamonds anyway. So create a diamond.
Yes. Okay. I think what I would say is there are lots of people whose work I really respect and I think it's important, and I'm really glad it exists. And I feel like my work then just becomes like just a contribution to that work, right? You know, there's a whole bunch of us. Like obviously, there's you, Kaz, I mentioned Tiff earlier. There are also people who have done this like more in the academic sphere, and I feel like their work also created a foundation for us, even if we don't know about that work or even if we haven't read it. You know, people like Professor Sylvia Tamale from Uganda, Hakima Abbas, Sukari Akin, you know, who did the Queer African Reader. I really like this book that was published by Cassava Republic Press, She Called Me a Woman, edited by Rafiat, Azina, and Chitra. You know, I feel like there's a whole lot of African feminists who have been doing work for a while around sex and sexuality to expand the conversation. Some of them have been doing this work in the digital spaces. Some of them have been doing this through like more traditional publishing. And yeah, for me, like that's super important to recognize.
Now, how do you feel about mentorship or being a mentor? So in both ways, finding a mentor and somebody who's going to guide you through your career, and you yourself being a mentor. Is that something you do?
Yeah. I mean, I feel like I've had different types of mentors, and you know, a lot of it is kind of almost informal. You just sort of reach out to them and ask for their advice when you need advice. My previous boss at the African Women's Development Fund is somebody who became a friend after I left, and it's somebody that, you know, a lot of times I've asked about like advice, especially because I also work in the international feminist space, you know, so Theosoa is somebody I consider a mentor. And I know that there are lots of, you know, younger African feminists who see me as a mentor, but it's not like a formal relationship. They just send me voice notes and ask my opinions on things, and I send them voice notes back and respond. And I feel like that's a way to, you know, both have people that you can reach out to for support and do the same for them. And even with my peers, there's so many peers that I also consider, in essence, mentors that I will reach out to if I need advice and support. And I feel like it's all about, you know, having a strong support system and where possible, expanding your support system.
Okay. I appreciate that. I always struggle with the idea of mentorship. I don't know why. It just feels like a lot of pressure to me. I think one of the reasons might be that I'm introverted and people don't know that about me. I know I look like an extrovert. Yeah, sometimes act like one.
Yes.
But I'm really not. I would much rather be in my house than be anywhere else.
I so understand that.
So I kind of struggle with mentorship and the conversations around it. And I'm always very curious to see how people who are in the public sphere are gaining from it or are giving back to society. What are some of the things that you know now that you wish you had known before you started?
Before I started what specifically though?
Before you started the Sex Lives African Women, the blog. Adventures of African, what is it? Adventures?
From the bedrooms of African women.
Adventures from the bedroom of African women, yeah.
What do I know now that I wish I had known then? I mean, I guess I wish I had always known about the incredible diversity of African women's experiences around sex and sexuality. It definitely took, you know, co-founding the blog with Malika Grant and all of these years speaking and interviewing women for me to get a sense of how expansive our sex lives are and all of the possibilities that exist. I definitely wish I'd known that as a teenager, and I'd known that there were many more possibilities, and I wish I'd known that, yeah, even if guys are gossiping about you and, saying mean stuff about you, like, you just kind of like need to like ignore everybody and do you. I wish I'd known that at a much earlier age.
Because I do not like the concept of growing thick skin. The only skin that I want to be thick is like when you're pole dancing, you have really sensitive areas in your skin. Those are the only parts of my skin that I want to be thicker so that I don't feel so much pain and bruising. Otherwise, I don't think like you need to have thick skin is a thing that we need to be telling people, because if you don't, you can be soft. You can be soft and thrive. And I think that's the message that we need to pass.
Yes.
So Nana, first of all, your writing is really amazing. I have really, really enjoyed reading your book, and it's such an easy read. So I think anybody can read your book and be so engulfed in the stories, which I really appreciate. How would you say that you're able to tell so many different stories from so many different voices, but then also incorporating your own personal style of writing?
No, that's a really, really great question. I mean, that was actually one of the things that I wanted to do. And it's why I decided to use the first person point of view in the story, because I wanted each story to feel individual. I wanted to get people to get a sense of the person. And so for me, I asked people when I was interviewing them lots of really, really detailed questions. Like, how did you feel when this was happening? What else was going on around you? So I really got a lot of rich detail from people. And literally when I was writing, I imagined I was a person, and because I was taking on that person's persona. And for me, that really helped. And I personally enjoy writing that's really accessible and really just, easy to get. I learned a while back that don't use big words if you can use like, a simple word. And so I try to just use like simple language. At the same time, I try to use language that draws people into a story. And I also try to give a sense of place and, to engage people's senses. And also, I like to give detail when it comes to sex. One of the things I used to find frustrating is if there was a sex scene in a book, like they got into bed and then I just found it frustrating that you had on one end the Mills and Boone that was like really, really exaggerated and unrealistic, right? Yes. And then you had on the other hand no description of what would happen. It was like they got in between the sheets, and then it's kind of like that's the end.
And then like, what?
Exactly.
Like I just got my vibrator on.
And so for me, I wanted to give the detail of what would happen, in a way that was matter of fact, but also if it's sexy, the person gets to feel that as well. So that's what I tried to do with this book.
And you did a really, really good job at it, because I mean, I hope it's not offensive to say it's a really easy read.
No, that's not offensive at all.
Yeah, it's a definitely a beautiful book, which brings me to where on the continent, for starters, can people find the book? And then where in the world can people find the book?
So part of what makes me really happy is the way African women have ensured that this book is available in their countries. People were tagging their bookstores, asking them to order it. A group of Ugandan feminists basically got together with an online bookstore in Uganda called Mahari Books and demanded that my publisher send the book to Uganda, even though originally my publisher had no intention of sending the books to Uganda. So it's available in Uganda, it's available in Kenya, it's available in Nigeria, it's available in Ghana. There's a book cafe in Abidjan that has it, so people can go to their library and resource to order it. It's like to just like sort of read it. I think the cafe is called 1949. I'm worried I'm getting their name wrong. It's where else? It's available in South Africa, and then obviously it's available in the UK next year in March. It'll be out in the US and Canada. Like literally, there's an African woman a Black woman who got in touch with me via Instagram. She's like, I'm going to this conference in Paris. I want to get your book there. I gave her the number for my publisher, and now she's organizing for a bookstore in France to order the book. And for me, that's been really incredible to actually
Wow.
see that there are individual African women who are like, this book needs to be read by people, and are like taking steps to get it to their countries, you know? And
Yes.
I think that's incredible.
It's also available online, right?
It's available, yes, via, you know, the store that I don't want to publicize because everybody gets stuff from them and makes somebody
Okay.
very rich. But it's available there. It's also available as an audiobook, you know.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yes.
I really want to be able to listen to the audiobook. I still haven't been able to access it, and I'm not sure if it's because my audio app, which we're not mentioning, is like linked to the US.
Yes, I'm sure it's linked to the US. If it was linked to the UK, you'll be able to access it. I have to say, I loved listening to my own audiobook because it was a completely different experience, right? It was voiced by three Black, British, and, you know, African descendant women in the UK. And that's another thing that's also made me happy. Like, I feel like, yeah, if more Africans got their books published, you know, we also create like employment opportunities for other African and Black people. When the book was
Mm-hmm.
launched in the UK, you know, a mixed race African woman was hired to do art installation at Waterstones. Would she have been hired otherwise by Waterstones? You know,
Possibly
yeah,
not.
possibly not. So that's the kind of stuff that also makes me really happy.
And just going off that again, it just goes to show how much support you're getting around the world from so many different people. And I was going to ask, what's the reaction been to your book? But obviously,
No,
is there
I feel
anything
like
specific that stands out?
no, the reaction has been really, it's been really positive. It's been really incredible. I would like to say it's due to the quality of my writing.
Yes, I would like to reiterate that.
Yes, but it has actually been really good. But I think it also shows that there's been a need for this, right? Like I already mentioned a lot of books by African feminists on sex and sexuality, but I feel like my book is filling a niche that hadn't really been fulfilled as much as it could have, you know. And then there's also the reality that sex sells. So if you're writing well about sex, you
Yeah.
know, yeah, that also really helps.
Yeah, that's actually very true. So definitely want to be able to push your book as much as I can in Kenya. But a final question for you, and this one is going to give you a bit of time to think about. You have the opportunity to have dinner with three authors, dead or alive. Who do you pick and why?
In a way, this is quite easy for me. Um, Dead, I would pick Maya Angelou because I really, really, really wanted to meet her. As a teenager living in London, I remember walking into a Borders, which is a bookstore that no longer exists, and walking right to the back of the bookstore to the black book section and flicking through the books and coming across a book called All God's Children Need Traveling Shoes. And the next Maya was writing about her time in Ghana. And I was just like, oh my God, there's a book and Ghana is in it. And I bought it and I read it and I loved it. And I went back and like read every other book in Maya's autobiography. And that was one of the things that I loved. I'm like, oh my God, she was so smart. She didn't just write her autobiography in one big fat book. Like there were like 5 or 6 books, you know, documenting her life. And that for me was super inspirational. And like there were so many life lessons I took from Maya Angelou, and I really wanted to meet her. And I could have met her because I have a friend who is connected to her, and he was supposed to introduce us, and it never happened. So yes.
So you're still one degree of separation away from Maya Angelou, and we will not take that away from you.
Yes. And so I would love to have dinner with her ghost. You know, I would still love to have dinner with her ghost. And also, I mean, the author Amate Du, who is in Ghana and, you know, such an icon. Anytime I spend time in her company, it's lovely. You know, so dinner with her will be incredible. Bell Hooks, I would love to have a conversation with and to have dinner with. I think she's like incredible. Yeah, you said 3, so let me stop there. Amate Du, Bell
I'm
Hooks,
going to give you
and Maya Angelou.
I'm going to give you one more, a bonus person. Who's your bonus author? Okay, here you go. Wait. Here's your bonus person that doesn't have to be an author.
Oh, my bonus person who doesn't have to be an author. I love authors.
Okay,
So
there you go.
I,
Shoot.
I think I'll still be an author. I'm gonna go for Marlon James. Yes, Marlon James, who wrote Seven History. Wait, God, and I can't remember the title. Yeah, anyway, Marlon James. I'm gonna go for Marlon James. Yes, I would love to have
Okay.
dinner with him. He sounds super, super, super interesting.
Okay, is there a particular reason why?
I love his books, I really just love his books and his writing and the way he writes in patois. I think it's
Mm-hmm.
just like I love people who do interesting things to the English language and make it theirs. And I think he's like such an incredible example of that.
Okay. Okay, I accept your dinner invitation. I'll make the starters or the cocktails.
Thank you. Thank you.
But no, Nana, it's been really, really, really wonderful speaking with you. Honestly, it always is. I enjoy spending time with you. And every time we speak, I get to learn something new about you, and your baby grows. And I feel like I'm there as well. Cause like honestly, I just feel like that's such an important part of your life that I'd never ever want to leave out when we're having conversations. So thank you. Thank you for taking the time out.
Thank you so much, Kaz. Thank you for, the work that you do, for your incredible activism, and for being you, Thank you so much.
Thank
It's been
you.
lovely chatting to you.
Absolutely.
Let me introduce a new wave, we change the rules. A new app that you can use. Wanna change your life, then choose. Save money and invest. Pay bills when you decide. Safe and secure for you when you need a loan, request it. One bank for you, one bank for me. So chill and enjoy the ride. Stop the current account on it. One bank.
One Bank by Sterling. Open a current account and start transacting.
That 5 minutes madness only you can understand. Visit myspectre.com to get your Spectre experience. Spectre, loans in 5 minutes.